Today, let's study the Word of God under the sermon titled, The Commemorative Day of the Creator and the Commemorative Day of the Redeemer. There are few ways to easily discern which country you belong to and which country you are a citizen of. I will ask you a simple question. Please try to answer. There are people that belong to a country that commemorates Independence Day on August 15th. They commemorate the National Foundation Day on October 3rd. And they belong to a country that commemorates Hangul Proclamation Day on October 9th. Who are they? And which country do they belong to? Everyone here can easily know the answer, can't you? In order to know which country someone belongs to, we just need to know the days that he commemorates as a citizen. In the same way, through God's commemorative days, we can easily tell whether we belong to God's kingdom or not. We can easily tell whether we belong to the truth that can lead us to salvation or not. Then, are we commemorating the day of the Creator who made the heavens and the earth and everything in it? Are we commemorating the day of the Redeemer who saved us from this sinful world? These are the days commemorated by the true people of God. Nowadays, there are numerous churches like the sand by the seashore, and they all claim that they can be saved and enter the kingdom of heaven. Then, do they keep the commemorative day of the Redeemer and the commemorative day of the Creator? We need to look into this matter. Simply speaking, do they commemorate these days or not? No. Only in Zion do we commemorate these days. The churches do not commemorate the day of the power of the Creator, nor do they commemorate the day of the power of the Redeemer. Only with their lips and mouths, they call themselves the people of God's kingdom. Through these days, God discerns and recognizes His people. In order to save us out of the various difficult situations and to lead us to the eternal kingdom of heaven, God gave us His commands, laws, and regulations. God's people should absolutely keep the commemorative day to remember the power of the Creator, and the commemorative day to remember the power of the Redeemer as well. When we commemorate these days, we can regard ourselves as the people of God, can't we? Just as the Independence Day on August 15th is a very meaningful day to the people in Korea, the seventh-day Sabbath that commemorates the power of the Creator is a very meaningful day to the people of God. However, Saturday is just another ordinary day to everyone else. It is no different from other days. Everyone, if we want to enter God's kingdom, we must become God's people. That's the first qualification. If we are considered as God's people, shouldn't we keep the days that are commemorated in God's kingdom? We should also understand the meaning of these days. Isn't this why God granted us the Sabbath day and the 7 feasts in 3 times, which are the regulations of the new covenant? Today, let's confirm that through the commemorative day of the Creator and the commemorative day of the Redeemer, we can become God's people who remain faithful to the truth that guarantees the promise of salvation. Let's take a look at Matthew chapter 12, verse 8. For the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath. As Jesus is the Lord of the Sabbath, He regarded the Sabbath day as a holy day to commemorate the power of God the Creator. We can confirm this through Matthew chapter 12 and Luke chapter 4. The Sabbath is not an ordinary day, and Jesus awakened us to the importance of the Sabbath day by saying, I am the Lord of the Sabbath. What did God command us to do regarding the day that commemorates the power of God the Creator? Let's find out in Exodus chapter 20. Exodus chapter 20, verse 8. It reads, Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. Who should obey this command? It is something God's people who are going to heaven should obey. The day of the Creator is not a day that anyone can commemorate. It is not a day that any other religion can commemorate. Isn't the Sabbath a day that can only be commemorated by the true people of God who believe in God the Creator? Verse 9. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the 7 days is Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you, nor your son or daughter, nor your manservant or maidservant, nor your animals, nor the alien within your gates. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them. But he rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. The Sabbath day is a day to commemorate the power of God the Creator, who made the heavens and the earth and everything in it. Every country has its own commemorative days. China has its own commemorative days, and the United States has its own commemorative days. In which country do the people commemorate their Independence Day on July 4th? We can easily answer this. In the same way, regarding the people who keep the Sabbath day, commemorating the power of God the Creator, and the Passover commemorating the power of God the Redeemer, we can easily identify which country they belong to, can't we? They are the people who belong to God's kingdom. Nowadays, many churches claim the Sabbath is not Saturday. In the past, it was Saturday, but it was changed to Sunday, even if they interpret the Bible in their own way. Can the commemorative day of the Creator, who made the heavens and the earth, ever be changed? Can the Independence Day of Korea be changed from August 15th to August 16th? No, it cannot. It is because a great event that is worthy to be commemorated took place on August 15th. God rested on the seventh day and blessed that day. And God instructed us to remember the seventh day by keeping it holy. Although someone tries to change the seventh day to the first day, is that even possible? The day that God the Creator rested after creating the heavens and the earth and everything in it for 6 days was the seventh day. It can never be changed to the first day. In Exodus 20, regarding the Sabbath day that commemorates the power of the Creator, God commanded us to remember this day by keeping it holy. Let's take a look at Exodus chapter 31, verse 13. Say to the Israelites, you must observe my Sabbaths. The Sabbath day belongs to God. As God's people, we must certainly commemorate this day. The day of commemorating the power of our Creator should be the day that we commemorate. You must observe my Sabbaths. This will be a sign between me and you for the generations to come, so you may know that I am the Lord who makes you holy. Observe the Sabbath, because it is holy to you. Anyone who desecrates it must be put to death. Whoever does any work on that day must be cut off from his people. Under the law of the Old Covenant, the regulation of this commemorative day of God, the Creator, was so strict that people will lose their life for desecrating it. Let's confirm this through Ezekiel 20. Let us read Ezekiel chapter 20, verse 12. Also I gave them my Sabbaths. What did God give them? His Sabbaths as a sign between us, so they would know that I, the Lord, made them holy. God became our God, and we, who are keeping the Sabbath day, became God's people. God established the Sabbath day as a sign between God and us. Verse 13. Yet the people of Israel rebelled against me in the desert. They did not follow my decrees, but rejected my laws, although the man who obeys them will live by them. And they utterly desecrated my Sabbaths. So I said, I will pour out my wrath on them and destroy them in the desert. Ultimately, when we keep the Sabbath day, we are acknowledging the existence of God, the Creator, and commemorating His power of creation. Also, through this day, we come to revere and worship God. God regarded those who keep the Sabbath day as my people and proclaimed, I will be their God. In this way, God established the Sabbath day as a sign between God and His people. What about the people who do not have the sign, but claim that they can go to heaven? Though they regard themselves as God's people, what does God say to them? He says, I never knew you. Through the words given in Genesis 2, we ought to clearly understand why we should keep worship on the Sabbath, the day that commemorates the power of our God, the Creator. It's because we are God's people who belong to God's kingdom. The Sabbath is an extremely important day for us, so we must never regard this day as just another ordinary day. Let's go to Genesis chapter 2, verse 1. Thus the heavens and the earth were completed in all their vast array. By the seventh day, God had finished the work He had been doing. So on the seventh day, He rested from all His work. And God blessed the seventh day and made it holy. Because on it, what did God do on this day? He rested from all the work of creating that He had done. The day to commemorate the power of God, the Creator, who made the heavens and the earth and everything in it, is today, which is the Sabbath day. Through this day, God granted us His blessings and established a sign between God and us, who are keeping the Sabbath day. Human beings are living together in this global village on a small planet called Earth. However, among the various people in the world, how can we know if we belong to God? We need to examine which commemorative days we are observing at this moment. In which country do the people commemorate their Independence Day on August 15th? If this question was given on a test, what would your answer be? Korea? Japan? Germany? England? The answer is Korea. If you are Korean, it's easy to answer. Why did God give us laws, decrees, and regulations? Why did God give us the day to commemorate the power of our Creator? Why did God also give us the day to commemorate the power of the Redeemer? The people who do not keep these days do not belong to heaven. This is the criteria God will use to separate those who belong to heaven from those who do not. He will thoroughly distinguish between weeds and the wheat. No matter how similar the weeds and the wheat may look in their outer appearance, God can discern between the two. How does God distinguish between them? Through His laws, decrees, and regulations, when Judgment Day comes, we will be able to understand this clearly. However, as for God's people, if they don't keep this day holy, it would be detrimental for them. Everyone, since this day will be used to distinguish between those who belong to heaven and those who do not, we should never treat the Sabbath day that God has granted us lightly. It is safe to think that whenever we keep the Sabbath day, we are receiving confirmation that we are God's people. Let's go to Exodus 12. Exodus chapter 12, verse 6. Take care of them until the 14th day of the month, when all the people of the community of Israel must slaughter them at twilight. Then they are to take some of the blood and put it on the sides and tops of the door frames of the houses where they eat the lambs. That same night, they are to eat the meat roasted over the fire, along with bitter herbs and bread made without yeast. Do not eat the meat raw or cooked in water, but roast it over the fire, head, legs, and inner parts. Do not leave any of it till morning. If some is left till morning, you must burn it. This is how you are to eat it, with your cloak tucked into your belt, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand. Eat it in haste. It is the Lord's Passover. On that same night, I will pass through Egypt and strike down every firstborn, both men and animals, and I'll bring judgment on all the gods of Egypt. I am the Lord. The blood will be a sign for you on the houses where you are. And when I see the blood, I will pass over you. No destructive plague will touch you when I strike Egypt. This is a day you are to. What must they do? Commemorate. For the generations to come, you shall celebrate it as a festival to the Lord, a lasting ordinance. This is a day to commemorate the power of the Redeemer, who saved us from the sinful world when we were destined for eternal death. God said, don't forget this day, but commemorate it as a festival to the Lord for the generations to come as a lasting ordinance. Those who keep this command are God's people. They are those who will enter the kingdom of heaven. God's people must remain in the truth by keeping the Sabbath that commemorates the power of the Creator, and the Passover that commemorates the power of the Redeemer. We ought to remember these commemorative days. What about those who never keep the Sabbath, Passover, and the 7 feasts in 3 times? If they do not believe in God, the Father, or God the Mother who called us as God's people through the laws of the new covenant, the eternal kingdom of heaven will never come near them, even if they proclaim, I can go to heaven and I belong to God. Looking at this matter, we can see that there are so many pitiful souls around us. It is pitiful because they themselves think that they can go to heaven. Based on these commands alone, the Sabbath and the Passover that commemorate the power of God, the Creator, and the Redeemer, we can clearly discern between the people who belong to God's kingdom from those who do not. Thankfully, God granted us the Sabbath day and the New Covenant Passover that allows us to commemorate the power of the Redeemer. Jesus said, I have established this truth for you. Let's take a look at the scene in Luke 22. Let's see Luke chapter 22, verse 7. It reads, Then came the day of unleavened bread, on which the Passover lamb had to be sacrificed. Which day was it? It was the Passover. Jesus sent Peter and John, saying, Go and make preparations for us. Why are they making preparations? To eat the Passover. Where do you want us to prepare for it? They asked. He replied, As you enter the city, a man carrying a jar of water will meet you. Follow him to the house that he enters, and say to the owner of the house, the teacher asks, "Where is the guest room, where I may eat the Passover with my disciples?" He will show you a large upper room, all furnished. Make preparations there. They left and found things just as Jesus had told them, so they prepared the Passover. The Passover is the day to commemorate the power of our Redeemer. Jesus commemorated this day, and so did Peter and John, who were his disciples. Verse 14. When the hour came, Jesus and his apostles reclined at the table, and he said to them, "I have eagerly desired to eat this Passover with you before I suffer." Doesn't it mean that Jesus eagerly desired to keep this day, which commemorates the power of the Redeemer? If we are God's people who belong to heaven, we should keep the Sabbath day to commemorate the power of the Creator, and the Passover to commemorate the power of the Redeemer.
이 개념이란 반드시 지키고 있는 백성이 하늘나라의 백성이라고 볼 수 있단 말이죠.
To others, these days are just ordinary days. To everyone else, except for God's people, these days are merely a meaningless part of their lives. However, to God's people, this is an extremely meaningful day, isn't it? Jesus too waited and waited for this day and eagerly desired to eat the Passover. Finally, in verse 14, we can see the scene of Jesus celebrating the Passover. When the hour came, Jesus and his apostles reclined at the table, and he said to them, "I have eagerly desired to eat this Passover with you before I suffer." Let's look at the scene of Jesus eating the Passover in verse 19. And he took bread, gave thanks and broke it, and gave it to them, saying, "This is my body given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." In the same way, after the supper, he took the cup, saying, "It was the cup containing the Passover wine. This cup is the new covenant in my blood, which is poured out for you." When God redeemed mankind, he said that through his blood, he redeemed us. This was explained in Ephesians chapter 1, verse 7, and in 1 Peter chapter 1, verses 18 through 19 as well. About 3,500 years ago, when the Israelites were emancipated from Egypt, what did they put on the sides and tops of their door frames? They put the blood of the Passover lamb. In the history of the Exodus, 3,500 years ago, God identified the Israelites as his people through the blood and displayed his mighty power to save their households by allowing the disaster to pass over them.
3,500년 전 출애굽 역사 가운데 기록이 되어 있습니다. 그래서
In Luke 22, when Jesus gave the Passover wine to his disciples by saying, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood which is poured out for you," he identified them as his people through his blood.
이와 같이 붙는 것이라 하고 있습니다.
Also, in Exodus 12, God said, "This is the day you are to commemorate for the generations to come." Nowadays, there are numerous churches around us. However, they do not keep the Sabbath and the Passover that commemorate the power of the Creator and Redeemer. In this way, we can recognize their identity. They are not the people who belong to God's kingdom. They will not be able to enter heaven. What about God's people who are keeping the Sabbath, commemorating the power of the Creator? What about God's people who are keeping the Passover, commemorating the power of the Redeemer? Where are we heading? Isn't it the eternal kingdom of heaven? How sorrowful is it for some people who are full of pride and arrogance and born into this world with the purpose of persecuting God's people? As for us, even though we have temporary difficulties and challenging circumstances in this life, we will go to the place where there is no more death, sorrow, or pain.
다시는 사망이 없고 아픔이 없고 이제 고통이 없고
If there is no sorrow and pain, how amazing would that be? There is no pain. How great is the world where there is no pain? There are no tears. How glorious will that be? In that glorious world, we will reign forever and ever. When we think about the grace our Father and Mother are bestowing upon us, how blessed are we to keep the Sabbath day? Heaven is our country. Wow, I'm so excited. In this way, today too, let us all shout for joy and cheer up. Let us be joyful, thinking of our home we will go back to very soon. Also, I ask everyone to introduce the kingdom of heaven to our neighbors and boast about our Father and Mother, so that on the day our Father returns, we can be complimented as good and faithful children who spared no efforts for the gospel. Hoping that you've received much grace, I'd like to conclude this sermon. Thank you very much.